Hi, Contessas. Welcome to the Career Contessa podcast, your shortcut to being more fulfilled, healthy, and successful at work. I'm your host, Lauren McGoodwin. We're back today with another episode in our 3 in 30 series where we bring you 3 tangible tips in 30 minutes that you can implement in your career right now. My co host for the series is Marnie Lemonik, a career coach and a regular on the podcast. Hi, Marnie.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited for today because we are tackling one of the most common questions, which is how to find career clarity. If you've questioned whether your current path is for you or you've just been overwhelmed at how to decide what other paths could even look like, this episode is for you. From a coaching perspective, this is probably the most consistent obstacle that I see across so many different types of industries and career levels. So I'm really excited to dive into it. And Lauren, I was thinking about you as we were planning this episode because you've been in such a season of career clarity this past year.
Maybe it feels that way. I think before the clarity, though, you're often to get to the other side, you're in a sea of like the unknown. It's very murky waters. And I feel like I was probably in a sea of murky waters more than I was in clarity. I do think like once I ultimately made the decision, okay, I'm going to turn career Contessa into a side hustle. I'm going to do something new for a full-time hustle. Here's what that new thing. Like once I kind of like was able to answer some of those things like, okay, I want a full-time hustle, but what is that? Now the story is starting to make sense, right? Like the story is unfolding with a little bit more of the like before and after. We know what some of my after pieces are. So I think that for me, absolutely, I've been on this journey. It's not fast, it's not easy. Anyone who tells you they have some shortcut that will save you time because you just shake a magic 8 ball and it tells you what to do. I wish that existed. It doesn't. There's a lot of good reasons why that doesn't exist. I do think you have to kind of go through the process. And I will say, as someone who's on the other end of it, it feels really good to be on the other end of it because had I just jumped into the next thing or done something without the process, what I find is that you kind of take yourself wherever you go. This sounds very therapy oriented, but what I mean by that is um, people who have like things going on in their career, when they just jump to the next thing without trying to get some clarity about like, what do I value? What do I want? Like, take a beat, pause, do the reflection work. If you don't do that, you take yourself wherever you go. And so now it's a different environment or a different job title or a different boss, but it's the same you, and you're still operating without that really important self-awareness, I think.
That's very wise. I often tell people a similar sentiment when they are really burnt out, in particular, because oftentimes we're in environments that are hard, but sometimes we're making it harder on ourselves than it needs to be because of patterns we've gotten into in the working world. It reminds me of that quote, which is very spiritual therapy wherever you go, there you are. And I think that's just so wise.
Yeah, and I think career clarity, I also want to make sure people have a I don't know, like the right expectation around it. I think you're going to have a lot of moments of career clarity, but even like, I think your expectation should be moments, not just like, okay, I've checked the box and like, I'm never going to go back to this. I think this is one of those skill sets that when you learn how to navigate murky waters, you can do it 100 times and careers change so quickly. We just had an episode about why work feels really hard right now. And the woman was LinkedIn's career coach. And what she basically says, like, jobs are changing at a pace that like we've never seen before. And so when you have sort of this fatigue of learning something new mixed in with all these unknowns, plus maybe this fear of layoffs and other things changing, like we are operating in a really hard place. But if you can kind of look at this as like this is a really good skill to have in your toolbox. I think having that mindset to these type of conversations helps because it is not like okay, you go to the store and you pull a career off the hanger. Like it's not quite that quick before and after.
I never thought about the fact that career clarity could also be a desire for a little bit of control when so much is outside of our
Yes.
control. Like you said, that's a really unique way to view it because there is so much instability. And then the requirements of change and evolution is just something we haven't seen in the modern working world. I'm going to sit with that for a little bit. I totally agree. Yeah, that's very unique. Well, I think it leads really well into our misconceptions around career clarity, which we actually wanted to start with this episode because normally we love some rapid fire at the end. But I do think that Lauren and I have both gotten a lot of questions and concerns around career clarity to where we wanted to set the scene a little bit before we dive into the rest of the episode. So I'll kick us off with our first misconception, which speaks to very much what you just said, Lauren, that your end goal will never change. That's a really big misconception is I'm going to have career clarity once and then this is my career for the rest of time. But the good thing about that not being the case is that you simply don't know what is going to exist in the future. I can say from my own experience, I didn't give career coaches a second thought until a few years ago, until I had a coach that really made an impact on me. And that opened my brain to realizing that that's even a potential career. And here we are. And I hope that in the future, I'm doing types of roles to where they're new and exciting. I didn't know they existed. So if you can harness this as a positive thing and an exciting thing for your future, it will give you peace of mind because you're seeking that career clarity moment now, like Lauren just said, not forever.
Yeah, I would also add that means you are leaning into a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. So this is like if you feel this with yourself, this is a good thing. Like this is you growing, this is you evolving, this is you looking for what's new and wanting to continue to evolve and learn. That's a really good thing. So don't lose it. I didn't say it's an easy thing. I just said it's a really good thing. Okay, the next misconception is that your working preferences and energy allocation to work will never change. Okay, I absolutely want to make sure that we all understand your current life stage. One, it's not going to be your life stage forever, but it's also not going to be the thing. Like, for example, when I was first in my career, like in my 20s, I hate to like make it like 20s versus 30s, but in my 20s, before I had kids, my life sort of was work and that was okay with me. I didn't have a ton of other responsibilities and like I was willing to lean in and do that. My life stage has changed now. I have two young kids who depend on me for everything. There's only so much energy that can go around. And so I'm also realistic about, okay, my career expectations have changed because I'm in a different life stage right now, and that might change again at another point. So, we often overlook our personal evolutions when we think about our career for the long term. And that's why I think it's really important to think about like careers are these long evolving things. You take U-turns, you take left turns, right turns, U-turns. That doesn't mean, you do all of that while you're driving and you still are moving forward to a destination. So, moving forward in your career path does not mean a straight linear line. I know we've all seen these like amazing graphs and charts, but I think it's very important for us to normalize nonlinear careers and also to normalize, you know, taking our life stage uh, into consideration when we're also thinking about career changes.
And I think that leads into, which we don't have on here, but I do want to make sure we just plus one to it because I know a lot of people in the career Contessa community can relate to it. Giving yourself a little bit of grace when those life stages inevitably change. And whether that's motherhood, whether that's being a caretaker to family, maybe you're going through a big move and you're just not able to give your career as much as you have been able to in the past. It's being not only okay with that from a clarity perspective, but also from a self acceptance perspective. And that doesn't make you any less of a professional, if you will.
Agreed.
The last one I wanted us to talk about together because we have both gone through this relatively recently, and I know we've helped a lot of people through this as well, which is the concept that you are starting over or starting from scratch if you make a transition. And I say this all the time if you follow me on social media, but every skill is really transferable. And if you think you have a skill that is not transferable, DM me on Instagram and I will help you frame it. I had a client recently who did stand up comedy early on in her career and she was trying to move into sales, and we were digging into it in a really fun way. So it's just funny to me that when people are transitioning from one industry to another, they tend to think that it's starting from square one. The experience you've gathered is going to make you a stronger candidate, and the unique background you have could arguably make you a better candidate if you frame it in the right way.
Yeah, I have told this story probably on the show many times too, but when I was interviewing for my job at Hulu, I was working as an admin assistant for a university and I wanted to become a recruiter at Hulu. I was up against someone who had been a recruiter at, I don't know, Sony, some other entertainment company. I got the job over that person who had, quote, the right experience because I was so incredibly passionate about one, connecting the dots between what I was doing and how it would work into recruiting. And I told a very good story about how I knew this was the career for me, why it was the right fit, why I was passionate about it. I was able to say I just did 30 informational interviews. It's like, who wants it more? The person who's been doing it for the last 3 years, who's like, yeah, I did this and this and this, and I can just do it again here. Or the person who's like, I tell this story not because one is better than the other, but also to let you know, like, passion and hunger and like kind of being the not average applicant can really work in your advantage to your favor too and be an advantage. And I think, we've done a lot of episodes on like telling your career story. That is also very important. Like your transferable skills plus the story you tell about them and how they are a benefit to that employer is the magic formula to all of this. There's a great quote about show the 10% of you that's 100% relevant to the person who is hiring. And I think this is kind of what you're saying, Marnie. It's like you're not starting over. You're picking out your 10% that's going to be the most relevant to them.
I think it's really inspirational that you have a specific story about getting a role when someone else had more experience, because I know we all give a lot of advice on it and we say it's quote unquote possible, but there's not enough people sharing that specific of an example where you know for sure that you went up against a candidate who did have more experience than you and your grit and excitement paid off. I also know so many people are burnt out right now. So, just from a hiring manager perspective, I can imagine it is refreshing to talk to someone who has such a positive take and can come in with that fresh energy versus someone who's done the role already has preconceived notions and things maybe they're a little bit over. So, I really love that story. I've heard you talk about it, but not in that direct of a way. And I think that'll really help people.
Well, I'm happy that's helpful. And I want to go one level deeper because, I think tactical ways that you can approach finding career clarity is incredibly important. I think the stories are good, but let's talk about the actual steps since we know that, bringing this from big picture into actionable steps is really challenging, but also I think that's the reason why you listen to this podcast. So, here is my go-to process for finding career clarity. These steps don't need to be done in a specific order. They certainly don't need to be done all at once, but this is sort of like, okay, if I had to grab a bag of this, and this that are part of the career clarity journey, here are the must-haves I would pack in the bag. Number one is reflect on your strengths and your interests. So take the time to assess what do you actually enjoy at work right now? What's already working? What are you sort of like a naturally good fit at? Something that energizes you. I would start with the positive. So if you guys have ever taken Strengths Finder, I remember in college we did this and Marcus Buckingham, it was all about like forget about your weaknesses and only focus, double down on your strengths. I'm kind of taking that approach. I'm not saying that weaknesses don't matter and like we're all should be open to personal growth, but for the purposes of this take time to, and you're not going to do this in an hour. Like you need to just sort of be keeping track of this throughout like a long process. So when I was an admin assistant and I hated my job and I was crying in the bathroom and I hated it and I was like, what am I going to do next? I just wanted this like clarity of like, at least if I knew what I was doing next, that I could like put my energy toward that. For me to, what happened was I got a random assignment and I was really energized by the random assignment, which was recruiting, not the way we think of recruiting at companies, but for university, it was recruiting. And because I was paying attention to like, okay, what are the things that I like here? What things energize me? Okay, I just went to this thing. I liked it and I was really good at it. That is the breadcrumb. So find your breadcrumbs that are very energizing. Find what you are really good at, ideally things that you're good at that someone would actually pay you to do also. So you can also take personality assessments. I mentioned Strengths Finder, Career Fitter, Myers-Briggs. My personal opinion though is that those kind of give you I don't know, like it's not nothing. I think they're helpful, but I would not use them in replacement of doing this on your own. Okay, number two in my process is define your non-negotiables. So identify key factors that matter most in your career, such as work-life balance, your career values, salary expectations, company culture, remote or flexibility. This really helps you narrow down your options. We have a Career Contessa worksheet that's free. I'll put it in the show notes that you can use. It's literally called Figure Out Your Next Career Move, and it will ask you a bunch of these questions. When I was recruiting, we would often ask people this during the offer stage. We'd be like, what are the top three things most important to you? So this is really valuable because you might use it later on in a negotiation. But for me, when I was doing my search, I had a salary number. I was like, I have to make at least this amount. I also, benefits was really important. My daughter has a lot of medical appointments, and so I needed someone who's going to have really good benefits. My other non-negotiables, I wanted to be able to work from home. Those were mine. Now, maybe if I was 25, it would be like growth, career potential. What's the coming, whatever. Everybody's unique and has whatever is related to their life that's going to influence that. So, but define your non-negotiables. You can do your top 5 to 8, but then star your top three or have it in order so you know. And also, it really helps guide you so you're not like wasting your time and thing like that. All right, number three on my list is explore through projects and internal networking. So if you're unsure about your next step, take on a new project at work that aligns with something you're interested in, something that will help you stretch your skills. This will allow you to test different areas without leaving your job. Additionally, build relationships with colleagues in different departments. Learning from their experiences can really provide insight into new career paths. We have an entire episode about internal networking. That is especially for people who are thinking about, I want career clarity, I want to make a career transition. One of the best places to do that is within your own company. So I had a friend who was in recruiting. She really wanted to go into marketing. She made the transition internally at her company to marketing, and now she's been on all these up and up and up trajectory for her career related to marketing roles. So do not forget about your internal network and like getting some experience through those projects. Next on my list, so this is one, two, three, number four. Okay. Explore and experiment. So seek informational interviews. You guys know how much I love those. Go on a listening tour. I talk about a listening tour in my book, Power Moves. You can take online courses. You can volunteer in areas of interest. Just really gaining some real world exposure allows you to test different paths without making that full commitment. And most importantly, it allows you to have something to talk about. We want to tell a good story when we are interviewing or doing something next. So when I was trying to think about my next career move with things related to Career Contessa, I started having informational interviews. Now I narrowed down some categories I was interested in based on some of the earlier steps. And so I started having informational interviews with people who were working in brand marketing, employment, branding, and talent and leadership development, right? Those were kind of the three categories I had narrowed, like swim lanes. Those were my three swim lanes I was interested in. So I tried to have informational interviews with people. Now, cold informational interviews used to be a little bit easier. They're a little harder now because there's so much stuff going on LinkedIn. So you need warm connections, or you need to engage with people a lot first and kind of build the connection before you just ask for the informational interview. But I'm literally, I don't know, 15-ish years into my career, and I'm still having informational interviews with people. So, and I'm was working at Career Contessa, and I was literally sending informational interview requests, cold informational interview requests to people. Of course, my acceptance rate wasn't that high, but I did have, I remember I had a couple of calls with people at Pinterest, a couple of people at other companies. So I mean, proof it can work. Okay, my last piece of my puzzle piece in this is create an actionable plan. Back to your earlier point, Marnie, about control. This is really important because you can do all these things and kind of feel like you're still sort of floating. Like, what am I getting at? What am I doing? So break down your next steps into small, achievable goals, whether it's updating your resume, networking, applying for roles, having a roadmap, whatever makes the process less overwhelming for you. I think also this is the part where it's like, instead of making the goal, find a new job or figure out what you want to do next, it should be like network with 10, 10 people over the next 6 months or something like that, or find one networking event. Break it down into really bite-sized actionable pieces that will give you the momentum to keep going with this process. Nobody gets this process done in a week. Nobody gets it done in 30 days. This is like this, these are the big, like, they call them like big, hairy, audacious goals, your BHAG. Like this is your BHAG, okay? Like this is your thing where you're like, oh, this is gonna be hard work, but it's gonna be worth it. So yeah, that's my process in a nutshell.
I love a BHAG. Very tech corporate lingo.
Right now.
I am finally reading Atomic Habits, which is embarrassing. It took me this long to read
So
it, but
good.
something that James Clear is continuing to say and is really sticking with me is that everyone has the same goals. So you can't talk about goals as an indication for success. You have to focus on the actions to get there. So I think your point, Lauren, is so smart about make it the 10 networking outreaches or whatever it is. And that's the win. And then the career clarity will naturally come in time. You just have to have patience.
Yep.
My process is similar to yours. To give everyone some context on how we laid out this episode, we both wanted to give our go to strategies for career clarity. But I think, surprise to no one, I have a similar sentiment, which is to start with an assessment online, because I do think that's a good first step to get clear on what you're good at, because sometimes we're too close to our superpowers to really know that they're superpowers. So I love Career Fitter. We'll put that in the show notes, but I use that as a starting point. And then I take those results and put them into a more structured agenda. So I am going to do a video on Instagram that breaks all this down in detail so you can see the diagram that I'm referencing in this episode. But similar to Lauren, I like to think about it in different categories. I just splice mine into two different buckets. So one bucket is the position fit or the role itself. And then the second bucket is the culture fit or the company itself. We've talked about this in a few other episodes, but the tendency to focus so heavily on the position fit tends to be the more common path where we think we need a certain title or it needs to be a certain list of responsibilities, but the culture of a company and specifically your manager dictates a lot of your work experience. So I like to think about it from both sides of the coin. And within your position, you can think about what Lauren already spoke to, your skills, what you're good at, but you can also think about what you enjoy doing from your skill set, which is a piece that I've noticed a lot of people miss, where every job is going to have an element that you don't love. But sometimes we think, okay, I'm really good at math. I have to stay in a career that has math because I've always been good at it. You can get good at a lot of things. You just have to know that it may take you time to reach that level of expertise in a different category. So that's something I would keep in mind. And then obviously for the role itself, you can also think about your personal interests. So is there a mission that you're really passionate about that you want to support? There could be an industry or a field that you care about, but oftentimes I've noticed that the deeper meaning behind it is really like, what kind of contribution do you want to make in the world? And then from a culture fit, in the interest of time, I'm not going to dive into every element on that we could go into. But the big thing that I would keep in mind, and if you take Career Fitter, it'll tell you this, is what personality do you bring into the workplace and what type of environment lends itself to your type of personality? Because I can tell you after coaching hundreds of people, some of us are super type A, some of us are super type B. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, and then they're not clear on which type of environment is best suited for them because they're a mix of both. So you really want to take all of this high level personality test data and plug it into whatever system works for you to have that structure, because the structure, to Lauren's point, is what's actually going to yield actions and bring it back down to planet Earth. Otherwise, you could stay in a really high level cycle of contemplating the meaning of your career without ever actually taking a step.
Yeah, and I find when people do that, then it goes back to, I've said it many times on the show, like proactive versus reactive. Now you're reacting to things in your career versus proactively directing the path that you're going to be on. So when people kind of get overwhelmed with this work, instead of kind of sitting in the pocket of discomfort a little longer and being like, I'm going to keep doing this, even if I don't have all the answers yet, when they quit too early, then they are reacting. They're like, "Oh, a new job came my way. I'm gonna take it because I was already kind of thinking about it," but they don't take it with any more clarity. So to each their own. But for me, I have found that being proactive is like you are saving yourself so much time and energy down the road when you are really thoughtful about this up front. Okay, love that. Love that you kind of have these like specific quadrants and that you're going to make a video related to career fitter. I think people will find that helpful. And I also just wanted to mention one time I heard I don't know, like an exec on the podcast talk about culture fit versus values fit. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about what you want to do next and you learn about your culture fit is like also the value fit. Like okay, culturally, I'm an extrovert and this is like a very extroverted culture, but more importantly, like what do they value and does it align with what you value? Do they value the loudest voice in the room or do they value the person who is maybe speaks a little less often, but when they say something, wow, it makes an impact. Things like that. So just one more thing to add to let you all think about.
I want to throw out one of my favorite interview questions to ask these days to a hiring manager to be able to assess that point, Lauren, because I think sometimes people want to be able to fill out a culture, but they don't know how to do it in the
Yeah,
interview stage.
totally. Hmm.
So a good thing to ask is there one shared trait amongst all the top performers on your team that you've noticed everyone possesses? And you can even lead it with like, as the manager of the team, is there one shared trait that all of the top performers possess? Gives you the opportunity to obviously respond back and imply that you have that quality, but it's also a really good indicator of what do they view as the most important quality for success. If it's someone who can move fast, break things, throw a lot of stuff at the wall, maybe that's exciting to you, or maybe that's not exciting to you. So that's a helpful way to gauge. And I think we should move into our recommendations because I know we just threw out a lot of big, hairy, audacious ways to figure out your career next step. But we do have a few more approachable options that you could do, right after this episode if you want to get started with a little something. So, Lauren, I'll let you kick this one off.
Okay, my top three recommendations are number one, keep a work journal. So, kind of what I was talking about. We have an article about this on Career Contessa, as well as a template in my book, Power Moves, which is keep a work journal so that you are starting to notice what gives you energy at work, what drains you of energy, what's working, what's not working. I do find this is hard to do if you just sit down and think hard about it. It's really something that has to be sort of like thought about on a daily basis. Number two is a quote that I remember I had on my desk when I was at USC and I wanted to do something different was clarity comes from engagement, not thought. That is a Marie Forleo quote. And one of the things that I remember when I heard this quote when I was in the midst of, trying to figure out what I want to do that really just inspired the heck out of me is that the more you are engaging, the more you are doing this stuff, while it might not feel like it, you are working through your process. So clarity comes from engagement, not thought. You cannot sit there and think really hard and the answer comes to you in a dream. No, that's not how this works. Um, Number three is I'm sorry, but I'm going to promote my book, Power Moves, because I have some really amazing tips in there that I learned from real people, use them myself. I know they work, like going on a listening tour and like, how do you go on a listening tour? What do you send in your email? All of that's in there. And I think Power Moves is also just very much aligned with the person who's like, I want to be proactive in my career. Tell me how to do it. It's the guide that helps you do that. And then, okay, I know you said three, but I have a bonus item, which is Chat GPT. I love having like take your work journal notes, put it into Chat GPT and start having a conversation with it. Just again, it's not to copy word for word, it's just a little inspiration, is to get something out. It's a brainstorming partner. I really love it. And also it's a way to get more comfortable with AI. And a lot of people are sort of like, I don't know how to adopt AI. It's like you just start doing it. So those would be my resources.
You definitely do not have to apologize for promoting your own book. I'm excited that you shouted that out. And I love that approachable way to use ChatGPT as well, because I think something that I found through using ChatGPT for my own career clarity is it'll often tell you what you've already heard or maybe like what you've seen online, but there's something about just seeing it organized right in front of you that can call you out a little bit. Or it's like, okay, I do need to network. I do need to go on that listening tour. Like I already knew these things were the case, but seeing it mirrored back at me is forcing me to actually want to take action.
Yep, agreed.
Good accountability buddy, almost like a free career coach. And on my side, I did already mention Career Fitter, but the reason that it's a favorite of mine for those online assessment tools, and again, we'll put it in the show notes, is because it gives you not only your strengths and your personality, but it dives a little deeper about the type of environment you might enjoy. And I noticed that the environment piece and the type of company that you could thrive at is normally the missing piece. So I like that a lot, again, as just a starting point. The other thing that I have my clients do that I actually got from a therapist years ago and is super interesting is a values exercise. So, Lauren, you mentioned the values fit of a company. If you're in a larger transition in your life or you're just not sure what your key values are right now, this is a list of 80 or 90 values, and you have to whittle it down to a top 10 list, which is really hard to do because they're all pretty positive values. So I normally only share this with clients, but if you want this, feel free to just follow me on Instagram at Marnie Lemonik. We'll put this in the show notes too, and DM me values, and I will send it to you completely for free. It's a nice compliment to all of the career focused stuff because sometimes when you think about your life at a higher level, then you get to back your career into it and say, okay, these are the values I care about. What career would lend itself to supporting those values, which is also very empowering in terms of taking control. And then last but not least, networking target lists. So, similar to the listening tour and going on those informational chats, I always like to recommend having a targeted list where you have a priority for companies you're excited about or just where you keep yourself accountable. So if you're going to reach out to 10 new people a week, you track all those people, you make a list of the advice they give you, the people they tell you to reach out to. It's almost like a virtual Rolodex that you can have in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I love a networking target list. I remember I mean, I use, you guys know this, but we have a job search dashboard on Career Contessa, and that was 100% based on my job search. And I get high off of like updating that little list, like putting in my notes in there, knowing when I'm going to follow up, like just getting my plan together. So you're like me and you're like a type A planner, you're going to like love all these little lists. Yeah, I hope this has been really helpful. If anybody is struggling with their career clarity, or if you have like a really good story of how you found your career clarity, like I said, it's probably one of those things where it didn't happen overnight, but now the story maybe makes sense to you. DM us, Marnie Lemonik on Instagram, Career Contessa on Instagram, or also on LinkedIn and tell us because I want to share more of people's stories, especially on these episodes. So if you have something good that you're like, I got or like you're like listening to this and you're like, yep, this happened to me or something similar, tell us. We want to hear the story. And we'll make sure all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, as always, for listening. We're going to be back here in April with our next episode. And Marnie, where can people let you know where, like, what topic they want to talk about? Because I don't think we've decided April's episode yet.
Yes, we normally talk about it on my Instagram, which is just at Marnie Lemonik. We have a few top contenders, but we do not have a decided topic. So I probably will do a poll on my story to make the final decision, but we're always open to ideas as well. A lot of the topics, including this one today, came from recommendations and comments and messages. So do not be shy in letting us know. We always want to make sure that these are relevant for you.
And just want to say finally, thank you for listening to this episode of the Career Contessa podcast. Please take your time to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Just letting us know how you're liking these episodes so we can know if we should keep doing more of them. But liking the show, rating it, reviewing it is it's the number one way that you can support the show so we can be back here each week. So thank you so much.